Hello everyone, hope all of you are safe and healthy. Welcome to IS Baba's Rapid Revision Series for Prelims 2021. This is session 36 and day 50. And the topics we have are post-Gupta age and early medieval India. So these are the hot topics we are going to discuss. That is the Ambattur inscriptions of Vijayanagara, then Bakshali manuscripts, and then Hindu Shahi kings, and then the Khajuraho temples of Chandelas, then administration of Harshavardhana, and then Kashmir and the Sanskrit and the relation between the two, then Ras Utsav, then the Bahmani kingdom, then Kakatiyas of Warangal and Telugu Cholas of Renadu. And friends, coming to first one, Ambattur inscription. Friends, it was in news because in Ambattur, in Chennai, we got an inscription and Hindu carried a report regarding that. That is, the report says that the granite slab presents a vignette of Ambattur as a trading hub in the 15th century. So the inscription provides some information that Ambattur was a trading hub in 15th century. So coming to more details regarding Ambattur, it is a 2 feet tall slab containing 23 lines and it was written in Tamil and it was from left to right. And then it contains that Malayadeva Maharaja of Vijayanagara Empire, he was said to be donating half of the total taxes collected from the weekly market in the neighborhood towards the annual maintenance of Shiva temple. So that is, he used to donate the taxed money to the maintenance of the Shiva temple. And then Ambattur was a major trading town and it connected to other trading hubs like Tirupati, then Uttakottai and then Periyapalayam. So Ambattur used to connect to these places or other trading towns. And then specifically 3 taxes were mentioned in the inscription. They were Ulalayam, then Alapputabam and Adikasu. So what was Ulayam? It was an entry fee into the town. And then Alapputabam was a tax to establishing the trading outlets. So to establish your shop, you need to pay Alapputabam tax. And then Adikasu is collected for the space used in the weekly market. So not only shops, in front of that, if you are utilizing a space, for that as well, you have to pay the rent or tax. So this is all about Ambattur inscriptions. Friends, some other inscriptions were also found. They are the Krishnadevaraya's death inscription. That is, the inscription with reference to the death of Sri Krishnadevaraya, the Vijayanagara Empire, was discovered at Honnenalli in Tumkuru district of Karnataka. And friends, normally the death of kings was not recorded and this was a rare one. And then one more inscription was the Kalahasti inscription and it refers to the date of Achyutaraya's coronation as of October 21st, 1529 AD. So at this date, Achyutaraya, he rose to the throne. And then friends, here itself we revise Vijayanagara Empire. Friends, Vijayanagara Empire was started by Harihara and Bukka and it consists of 4 important dynasties. They are Sangama, Saluva, Tuluva and Aravidu. Then fortification. Friends, the Hampi, the capital of Vijayanagara empires, is said to be having 7 concentric circular forts, or in other words, Hampi was said to be guarded by 7 forts. And then some of the visitors like Barbosa, Fernando Nunes, Domingo Paez and Abdul Razak, they visited the kingdom. Friends, we know that Abdul Razak, he exalted by seeing the kingdom as saying that if there is a heaven on this earth, it is this and it is this. Or in other words, Gar Firdos ba Ruye Zaminast, Haminasto, Haminasto, Haminast. Friends, these words are being written on the walls of Red Fort. So the same words we revise here itself. And then Hazara Rama temple was constructed by Vijayanagara empires and then Mahanavami Dibba was also found in Hampi. So this is a platform wherein Mahanavami festival was held. And then Lotus Mahal was there and mostly friends, the Vijayanagara kingdoms were called Narapatis and the Bahmani kingdoms were called Ashwapatis and the Odisha kings, they were called Gajapatis because Bahmanis traded in horses and Odisha kings, they traded in elephants. So this is all about Ambattur inscriptions and Vijayanagara. Coming to next, Bakshali manuscripts. Friends, why was it in news? Because carbon dating of ancient Bakshali manuscript was recorded that the first use of zero was dated to be 300 years earlier than previously thought out. So by this manuscript, we found that the zero was invented long back in 200 AD, not in the 500 AD as we have thought out. So we know that Aryabhata and Brahmagupta, they invented zero in India in 500 AD and it was found that in 200 AD itself zero was present. So in this context, we revise a brief history on zero. That is, the first recorded zero appeared in Mesopotamia around 3 BC. So friends, long back in 3 BC, Mesopotamia had 0. So this inscription, it speaks only of the history of India, not the world, because the world had the 0 much earlier. And then the Mayans of Mexico and Guatemala, they invented it independently in 4 AD. So in the 4 AD itself, these Guatemala and Mexico civilizations, they had 0. But however, in India, it was devised in the mid 5th century. That is, in 520 AD, the Aryabhata, he came up with the digital 0, and Brahmagupta in 628 AD, he came up with a formula that deals with 0. That is, 1 plus 0 is 1, 1 minus 0 is 1, and 1 into 0 is 0. This is what the formula he gave, and he had taught that 1 divided by 0 is also 0. But however, Bhaskara said that 1 divided by 0 will be infinity, not 0. Then 0 spread to Cambodia near the end of 7th century AD, and then into China and Islamic countries at the end of 8th century, and 0 reached Western Europe in 12th century or in the 1100 AD. So this is a brief history of 0. Friends, at the same time, we revise some of the mathematicians of India and their works. That is the first one, Budayana. He provided Sulva Sutra, or the treatise that consists of geometry, and he provided it in 800 BC, long back. And then Aryabhata, he came up with 2 books, that is Aryabhatiya and Arya Siddhanta. So he was interested in astronomy, then mathematics and several other things. And then Brahmagupta, the use of 0 in 600 or 620 AD. Then Bhaskara I, he came up with Siddhanta Shiromani, and in that book he said that 1 divided by 0 is infinity, and he did it in 630 AD. So we can say that Bhaskara and Brahmagupta were contemporaries. And then Varaha Mihira, he came up with Brihad Samhita, and he was an expert in trigonometry, and he survived around 550 AD. And then Mahavira, he was an expert in algebra, and he survived at around 800 AD. And then Sridhara, he found the formula for the volume of a sphere, and he again survived around 800 AD. And then came Bhaskara II. He came up with 4 to 5 books on mathematics, that were Leelavati, Bijaganita, Grahaganita and Goladhyaya. So algebra, arithmetics, geology, planetology, all were included in this. So this is a short history of Indian mathematicians. Then come to next, Hindu Shahi kings. Friends, why was it in news? Because recently ancient Hindu temple was discovered in the northwest Pakistan during an excavation at Barikot, Gundai. So in this place, when Muslims ruled consecutively for centuries, the Hindu temple was found. So that is why the curiosity of historians was kindled. So a Hindu temple of Lord Vishnu in the northwest Pakistan's Swat district, and it was built 1300 years ago during the Hindu Shahi period. And who were Hindu Shahis? They were the kings who ruled this area from 850 to 1026 AD. And it was a Hindu dynasty that ruled this Kabul valley, and they ruled in Kabul, Gandhara and northwest India regions. And it was established by Kullar, a minister who rebelled against Kabul Shahis. So Kabul Shahis were said to be Muslims, and Kullar was said to be a Hindu. And then this dynasty was said to be descended from Kushana Empire or the Turks, and that is why he might be called as the Tarushkas. But however, friends, the history and the origin of Kullar is being debated. Some historians also say that Kullar was a Kshatriya, and some others say that he was a Brahmin, or he was from Brahmana Varna. But however, Safaris, they soon took over the Kullar's kingdom, and once again the Muslims' rule was re-established. So this is a short interregnum wherein Hindus, they ruled Kabul valley. So this is all about Hindu Shahi kings. Coming to next, Khajuraho temples. Friends, why was it in news? Because the Ministry of Tourism's Dekho Apna Desh webinar series, it held its 85th webinar titled Khajuraho temples. So in this context, Khajuraho will become important. Khajuraho temples were built from 950 to 1050 AD by Chandela dynasty, and they were built in 3 groups, that is eastern, west and southern Khajuraho temples. That is, the eastern, western and southern parts of the Chandela kingdoms were filled with these temples, and then famous for their Nagara style and erotic sculpture. Yes, we know that it was built in the famous North Indian Nagara style, and they were famous for erotic sculptures. And then they were constructed by sandstones. And then the largest temple was the Kandarya Mahadev temple, which is attributed to the king Ganda. So King Ganda, he built Kandarya Mahadev temple. And then coming to the architectural features of Khajuraho temple, they have towers or shikara of the curved pyramidal fashion. That is, if this is a pyramid, they are curved pyramids. So, like this. And then they have a horizontal fluted disc. Friends, fluted disc means there is no flute here, but they are grooved. So, the discs are grooved like this. And then they have a Amalakand Kalash on the top. They have an Amalakand Kalash on the top. So, this is how the shikaras of Kandarya Mahadev temple were found. Then come to next, some of the more temples are Kandarya Mahadev temple, then Chausat Yogini temple, and then Brahma temple, then Chitragupta temple, and Devi Jagadamba temple, Lakshmana temple, Matangeshwara temple, and Parshvanatha temple. So these are some of the temples built by Chandela rulers. So here Parshvanatha temple might be belonging to Jainism. And then we have Lakshmana temple instead of Rama temple. And then we have Chitragupta temple instead of Lord Yama. We know that Chitragupta was the assistant of Lord Yama. So here we have a distinct feature of building temples for assistants or the second heroes, not the first heroes. So these are some of the temples, that is the Kandarya Mahadev temple, then Chausat temple or the Chausat Yogini temple, so which is circular in shape, and then we have Lakshmana temple, and here this is Chitragupta temple. So these are some of the temples. They all have the curvilinear pyramid with the fluted disc and Amalaka with Kalash. So this is all about the Khajuraho temples. Then come to next, administration of Harshavardhana. Friends, if we study administration of Harshavardhana, then it is equivalent to studying administration of Mauryas, Guptas, Shashankas, then Maitrakas, Pushyabhutis, and even Rashtrakutas. So all were similar in nature. So we will discuss. Harshavardhana was the king and he was the sole administrator. And he had the main minister and he was the Mahasamantara or Samanta Maharaja. That is how he was called. And then the whole kingdom was divided into provinces called Bhuktis. And the head of the Bhuktis was called Uparika. And then each Bhukti or each province was divided into Vishayas or the districts. And the head of this district was called Vishayapati. And each Vishayas were divided into villages or the Gramas. And these Grams were headed by Gramika. So this is the hierarchy of Harshavardhana's rule. And then there were several officers in Harshavardhana's kingdom. That is the Mahasandhi Vigrahaka. He was the officer to decide about war and peace, or maybe the diplomatic officer. And then Mahabaladikrita. He is the highest official of the army. And then Baladikrita. He will be the commander-in-chief of the army. And then Ayuktaka. Friends, Ayuktaka is very similar to Ayuktas of Mauryan kingdom. So similar to the current IAS officers. So they were generalists or ordinary officers. And then Vrihadashvatara, he was the head of cavalry, or he is also called as Kantuli, and Ashvatara means cavalry, we know that. And then we have Rajastaruya or Rajastaniya, he is the foreign minister. And then we have Katuka or Skandagupta, he is the head of the elephant brigade. So these are some of the military and civilian officers of Harshavardhana kingdom. And friends, Harshavardhana had fixed 1/6 of the shares as taxes. That is, everyone has to pay 1/6 of the produce as taxes. So there were taxes like Hiranya, Bali, then sales tax, temple tax, and others in Harshavardhana's rule. Then coming to more about Harshavardhana regarding contributions in the literary works. So the first one is Bana or Bana Bhatta's Harsha Charitra. So this speaks of biography of Harshavardhana or the rise of Harshavardhana. And Bana Bhatta has also written Kadambari and Parvati Parinaya. So these were maybe dramas, and then some of the dramas were also written by Harsha himself. That is the Ratnavali, then Nagananda and Priyadarshika. Then Harsha had also patronized Haridatta and Jayasena, other poets. And then Harsha also convened a large Buddhist council, and that was presided by Huyen Tsang. So here we can see that Huyen Tsang visited India during Harsha's rule. So this is all about Harsha's administration. Then coming to next, Kashmir and the Sanskrit. Friends, why was it in news? Because Indian Express, it carried an editorial saying that a forgotten history, that is the Kashmiri people, they are well versed in Sanskrit, but now this Sanskrit is fading away. So we will see the relation of Kashmir with the Sanskrit. Kashmir is very close to Uttarapatha and Dakshinapatha. Yes, the Silk Road, it bifurcates into Uttarapatha and Dakshinapatha at Kashmir as the center point. And then it is nearer to Sanskrit learning places like Takshashila and Shakala. So we know about Takshashila. You can do some research regarding Shakala, which is near Sialkot, Punjab. And then Kashmiri texts, the Neelamata Purana and Raja Tarangini, they were composed in Sanskrit. So friends, Raja Tarangini, we know that it was written by Kalhana, and Neelamata Purana was referred by Kalhana in order to write Raja Tarangini. But we don't know who was the author of Neelamata Purana. And then some of the historical names of places in Kashmir, they were said to be having the Sanskrit names. That is the Anantnag, Srinagar, Sopore, Baramulla, Tulmul, Kanraz, Maraz, they were Sanskrit names. That is how the historians found it out. Then coins in Kashmir, they depict the Sanskrit names of kings like Meghavahana, then Navasurendra Aditya Varman and the Lalitaditya. So these are very much Sanskrit names. And then Buddhist Gilgit manuscripts and the mathematical Bakshali manuscript are also in Sanskrit. So the Bakshali manuscript, which we studied earlier, is said to be in Sanskrit. And then Kashmiri Dardik language. Friends, Dardik language is something spoken by hilly regions. And earlier it was thought that these Dardik languages, they were not Indo-Aryan languages. But however, now historians, they similarize the Dardik languages with Indo-Aryan languages. So these are the relations of Kashmir with Sanskrit. So this is all about the editorial. Then coming to next, the Ras Utsav. Friends, why was it in news? Because every year the Ras Utsav will be held in Majoli. And even this year, Hindu carried this report, that is, at Majoli, the masks come out on Ras Jatras. So Ras Jatras, they use masks made of bamboo and other things. That is why it was in news. So now, Ras is a celebration of 500 years of cultural and artistic contributions of various satras. So what are these satras? These are the seat of Vaishnavite preaching introduced by Srimanta Shankara Deva in Majoli. So we know that satras are the seats of preachings by Vaishnavite saints. So this is also given in NCERTs as well. And then Jatra is an annual festival that involves song, dance and dialogues depicting the story of Lord Krishna. So Krishna is the main hero here. And then this song and dance, they involve various instruments like kol or a percussion instrument like mridangam, and then tal, cymbals, then nagada or the drums, then doba, something like a drum which is usually beaten in the temples. And then Samuguri Satra has been hosting Ras for the past 150 years. So this Samuguri Satra we will remember. And then it involves traditional handmade masks and costumes using natural materials like bamboo, soft clay, then shola or kuhila stems, that is a water plant. So the masks used for this song and dance and other dramas is made from these materials, that is naturally made materials. So this is all about Ras Utsav. So here we will also discuss Shankara Deva. Friends, the next class is about Bhakti and Sufi movements. We will discuss him in detail there itself. Then come to next, the Bahmani kingdom. Friends, Bahmani kingdom was in news because some of the newspapers, they carried report that the inscriptions of Chalukya, Kakatiya, Golconda sultans were being forgotten in today's world. So in this context, we study Bahmani kingdoms, then the splinter groups of Bahmani kingdoms. So to begin with, Hasan Gangu Bahmani, he established the kingdom in 1347 AD. And then they were at wars with Vijayanagara emperors for Tungabhadra Doab. So yes, Tungabhadra Doab was the bone of contention between Bahmanis and Vijayanagara. And we can say that Tungabhadra Doab was the reason for the fall of Vijayanagara empire. And then Muhammad Shah II was a famous king, and he was famous for building madrasas and hospitals. So Muhammad Shah II, he gave impetus to education and health system. And then Ahmad Shah, he changed his capital from Gulbarga to Bidar. So just like Muhammad bin Tughlaq, he changed his capital. And then Muhammad Gawan was the minister of Muhammad Shah III. Friends, we know that Muhammad Shah III was a child when he was ascended to the throne, and at that moment Muhammad Gawan, he took up on the administrative responsibility. And then the Muhammad Gawan, he improved the administration and he systematized finances. Then he encouraged public education and he reformed the revenue system, and he disciplined the army and he eliminated corruption. So friends, Muhammad Gawan stands out as the greatest officials who stood for efficient and energetic administration even at those times. Then come to next. After Muhammad Shah III, the Bahmani kingdom disintegrated into 5 kingdoms. namely the Bijapur Adil Shahis, and then the Ahmadnagar Nizam Shahis, then the Berar Imad Shahis and Qutub Shahis of Golconda and Bidar's Barit Shahis. So coming to Bijapur's Adil Shahi, friends, the famous kings were Yusuf Adil Shah and Ibrahim Adil Shah. And Ibrahim Adil Shah is said to be very secular, and he was said to be worshipping Ganesha and other Hindu deities. And some of the important constructions of Bijapur Adil Shahis were Farooq Mahal, Jamia Masjid and the famous Gol Gumbaz. And then Ahmadnagar's Nizam Shahis. They had the famous kings like Nizam Shah. Friends, he was the famous figure in Battle of Talikota, wherein all these rulers they joined to defeat Vijayanagara Empire. And then Chand Bibi was the solo queen emperor of Ahmadnagar's Nizam Shahis. And then Malik Ambar was the famous official of Ahmadnagar. And his revenue system was very much equivalent to Todarmal's revenue system in Mughals. And then some of the constructions of Nizam Shahis are forts of Junnar, Paranda and Darur. So we can say that Ahmadnagar's Nizam Shahis were builders of forts. And then Berar's Imad Shahis, they were short-lived and they mostly indulged in wars and they could not hold the chair for longer time. And then come to next, Qutub Shahis of Golconda. Friends, Kuli Qutub Shah was the famous ruler of Qutub Shahis. And the famous constructions of Qutub Shahis are Golconda Fort and the famous Charminar, which was constructed by Kuli Qutub Shah himself, and then the Char Kaman. And then Bidar's Barit Shahis. They built the tombs for almost all the rulers and they were famously called the Barit Shahis tombs. And they also built Rangin Mahal. So these are some of the activities of the splinter groups of Bahmani kings. Then come to next, Kakatiyas. Friends, why was it in news? Because a temple constructed by Kakatiya ruler in Amaravati has been converted into an adobe of local goddess Balusulamma. So in this context, Kakatiyas will become important. Then coming to more facts, the presiding deity at this 13th century temple was Kakati Devi. Friends, we know that the deity of Kakatiyas was also the same Kakati Devi. And then famous three contemporaries, that is Hoysalas, Yadavas and Kakatiyas. They were feudatories of Western Chalukyas. Friends, who were Western Chalukyas? Friends, we know that at the 6th century AD, the Chalukyas of Badami was established. And at the fall of Chalukyas of Badami, in the western part, Kalyani Chalukyas, they established the kingdom. And in the eastern part, Chalukyas of Vengi, they established their kingdom. So now who are Western Chalukyas? They are Chalukyas of Kalyani. So Hoysalas of Dwarasamudra, Yadavas and Kakatiyas, they were the feudatories of Western Chalukyas. And then Rudradeva, he became the first independent ruler in 1158 AD. So that is Rudradeva was the establisher of Kakatiya dynasty. And then Warangal was the capital of Kakatiyas. And then Rani Rudrama Devi was the famous queen emperor. So we will remember the queen emperors in almost all the kingdoms. Then come to next, the Mathupalli was the famous trading seaport of Kakatiyas. And then Marco Polo, the famous Venetian traveler, he visited Kakatiya kingdom. Yes friends, we have a good content of Marco Polo in NCERT as well. So here, do not forget to revise Ibn Battuta, Al-Biruni and Francois Bernier. So all the three are being provided in the NCERT. And then coming to next, architecture of Kakatiyas. The Rudreshwara temple was also known as Veyi Stambala Gudi or the Temple of 1000 Pillars. So this was built by Rudradeva, the establisher of Kakatiyas in 1163 AD. And then Ramappa temple. This is the only temple in India known by the name of the sculptor, not by the ruler and neither by the deity. And then Warangal fort. The Warangal fort was built by King Ganapati and it was completed by his daughter Rudrama Devi. So Rudrama Devi has this Warangal fort to her credits. And then Warangal fort, this 1000 pillar temple or the Veyi Stambala Gudi and Ramappa temple, they are all included in the UNESCO's tentative list of World Heritage Site. So here we can take a look at Veyi Stambala Gudi and then this is Warangal fort. So these are the remains and the fort is not intact to this day. So then coming to next, Telugu Cholas of Renadu. Friends, why was it in news? Because a rare inscription was recently unearthed from a remote village of Kadapa district in Andhra Pradesh. So coming to more details about the inscription, it was found engraved on a dolomite slab and shale. And then the inscription was written in the archaic Telugu language. And it was assigned to 8th century AD when the region was under the rule of Chola Maharaja of Renadu. So at this point the Cholas of Renadu will come into picture. And then what this inscription reveals, it is that it throws a light on the record of a gift of 6 marters of land to a person. And then it says that the people who safeguard this inscription will go on to perform Ashwamedha Yaga. So that is, they will grow on to become emperors. And those who destroy it will incur sin equivalent to committing murder in Varanasi. So Varanasi is a sacred place, and it was believed that if someone commits crime in Varanasi, will directly go to hell or Naraka. So that is why one who preserves will become emperor and one who destroys will go to hell. Then come to next, more about Renadu Cholas. Friends, Telugu Cholas of Renadu, also known as Renati Cholas, they ruled over Renadu region in the present-day Kadapa district. And they were originally independent and later forced to suzerainty of the Eastern Chalukyas. Now who are Eastern Chalukyas? They are Chalukyas of Vengi. And then they had unique honor of using Telugu language in their inscriptions belonging to 7th and 8th centuries. And then the earliest king was Nandivarman, who claimed descent from the family of Karikala Chola of Kashyapa Gotra. And then Chinese pilgrim Xuanzang or Huansang, who spent several months in Kanchipuram during 639 to 640, writes about the kingdom of Kuliya, an apparent reference to Telugu Cholas. So kingdom of Kuliya means Telugu Cholas. Friends, here what we will assess, it is that we know that from 300 to 350 AD, the Cholas of Tamil Nadu, they disappeared and Pallavas came to the picture. Until 900 AD, Cholas were not in the picture at all. So history books, they don't provide the Cholas in this period. But however, they survived as Renadu Cholas. So we can say that Karikala Chola, he was the king in early Chola dynasty. And these people who were the heirs of Karikala Chola, they lived in Renadu. And once the Pallava kings they weakened, and after the fall of Pallavas, the imperial Cholas, they came up to the prominence. And imperial Cholas, they were the descendants of these Renadu Cholas. So we can say likewise, and this is all about Renadu Cholas. Then coming to last part, friends, there is lot of difference between smart preparation and wholehearted preparation. So smart preparation can give you shortcuts, but wholehearted preparation will give you happiness. And wholehearted preparation will give you that satisfaction even if you lose. And smart preparation will not give you enough satisfaction even if you succeed. So which one will you choose? It is left to you. Do it, choose properly and come up with flying colors. All the very best friends. Good luck.